Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. And today we're going to have a special guest on, and we're going to be talking about the Bears 2021 offseason. So we'll start off with Dallas here. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell the people where they can find you.
Hey everyone, my name is Dallas Hyder. I am a co-host over at the Dynasty Warzone Network. You can find me on Twitter at Salad Galore. My name Dallas backwards Galore. And yeah, I'm usually a rookie content guy. Me and Craig here have been hashing out quite a few of our takes over the last couple months. And I'm excited to talk about the Chicago Bears, who are my personal fan favorite NFC team.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really interesting offseason for them. You being a rookie content guy as well, it's going to be interesting to see some of the picks that they do make in this draft, or whether or not they trade some of these picks away for a proven vet, maybe at that quarterback position. So maybe we'll start over there with the quarterback position, kind of what you think they should do, and then what you think they probably will end up doing. If I think those are going to be two different things for most people.
Yeah, completely agree. The QB position with Chicago has been their Achilles heel really since the organization was founded. We haven't really had a franchise quarterback in our long tenured history. We've always been a defense and running kind of team. We took a swing on an unproven guy, and odds are, based off of how the board breaks down this year, we are probably, if we draft one, going to once again take a shot on another unproven guy with minimal starts. Realistically, I'm talking about Mac Jones in the draft. I think he is the only quarterback with even remotely a realistic shot to make it outside of probably 12 at San Francisco. And odds are if he does make it outside of 12, he's probably going to end up going to New England anyways, unless we trade up. There are quite a few different options at the quarterback position, regardless of whether or not you wanted to go with the draft or free agency or, God forbid, retaining Nick Foles as our starter going into 2021. There's a lot of options. For me, it kind of breaks down into two specific avenues of thought. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but whether or not you're going for broke now this year, which is realistically what you think is going to happen with Pace and Nagy both fighting to save their jobs, or you're going to do the slow burn, which realistically is what we should do. So those two options basically would mean either taking a rookie or trading for a rational person, or going balls to the wall, making a stupid trade, or starting someone with a ton of upside but a lot of unproven talent. So my go for broke quarterbacks that I think realistically we're probably going to end up with are going to be either Jameis Winston or Cam Newton, two veterans. Not a lot of consistency with their arm, a lot of athleticism, and their decision-making is very questionable. When it comes to the slow burn options, like I said, I think we're either going to go with Mac Jones, or if we're going for the real slow burn, real low risk, just plain Jane, but a guy who fits the system that Nagy wants to run, I think Marcus Mariota is probably the most realistic slow burn option that I personally would be okay with bringing in. Worst case scenario, he's a bridge quarterback. We finish somewhere around, I would assume, probably 5 wins with an abysmal quarterback in our defense the way that it is. And we go into next season with a completely clean slate without having to basically trade all these assets. That's my wish, is either Mac Jones or Mariota most likely.
Yeah, I think too. With Mariota is kind of interesting to me. I don't know quite your thoughts on him overall, but he's just never been a guy that gets me too excited. I know out of college he was a little bit more, but just what he's actually done in the NFL. I think he could fit in that system, though. I think he reminds me a little bit of Trubisky, but he can run around a little better. Like, he's not going to have that big cannon of an arm. He's not going to make the deep throws. It's just going to be like watching the Bears last year when they played the Texans, where they just did a whole bunch of 8-yard passes. Another thing, too, will just be if Nagy wants to call the plays again, too, which I don't think should happen, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The thing with Mariota that I like a little bit more than Trubisky is that even if it's to a fault, he does not make the over-aggressive double coverage throws. So he reminds me more of an Alex Smith type player where he's going to be overcautious and underperform because he's overcautious as opposed to throwing the game away. And anyone who watched Chicago Bears football the last 4 years can tell you, just from watching the games, that there was probably, I would argue, probably a third of the games that we lost because of a horrible decision at the worst opportune time that Trubisky decided to try and either thread the needle, be a little bit too athletic when he can't outrace some of the guys that were chasing him down, or just throwing across his body. And that's not something that you're going to get from Mariota. So again, if I'm going for that slow burn option, that's a realistic, like, I want a guy who can operate the offense, isn't going to take the stupid risks, but actually has two legs, because God, I do not want Alex Smith on the team. I'm going Mariota. I really hope that is the way that we go, because it's the situation I see that we fit the cap the best, don't lose draft assets in the process, and our risk is mitigated.
Mariota's still under contract with the Raiders, right?
Correct. He has absolutely no guaranteed money on his contract, though, for this year. So he's a little over an $11 million cap hit for the Raiders this year. And so if they cut him, he's zero dead cap. So realistically, if they cannot basically trade him at some point in the next week, they're going to cut him before the new year begins, because they can save $11 million in cap. So,
and even with that, even if they do trade him, they probably aren't going to ask a whole lot for him if they just want to get rid of him anyways.
Yeah, at the most, I would give up I guess our last six. So I think we have 2 6th-round picks. I would give up our last 6th-round pick or our 7th. If they want anything over, I'd tell them to screw off, and I'll wait the 3 days until he becomes a free agent, because we're one of the few places that can guarantee him a starting position as long as he can beat out a guy that in his head he should be able to beat out.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the situation that happened last year with Cam Newton too. Everybody knew he was just going to get cut, so nobody traded for him.
Yep.
And I think, just depending on the team, though, some teams may be more inclined to trade for Mariota, just if they think his potential is a little bit higher too. Everybody had a lot of question marks around Cam Newton, and I hope Cam Newton doesn't end up with the Bears either, because I don't think it's a good fit either way. I don't think Cam Newton should be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. Maybe if you want to bring him in and be like your goal line back, but that's about it. Tim Tebow.
Cam Newton should go to Baltimore and back up Lamar Jackson. That is what he should do.
Yeah, and they cut RG3 now too, I believe.
I mean, RG3, I believe, threw for, I want to say it was like under 60 yards in 27 attempts in his 2 games that he played last year. Like, it was bad. It was really, really bad.
Yeah, that's way off topic though, but I could go on a whole thing about Tracy Mcsorley too. I don't think he's anything, but that's a whole nother story. If they were going to go after a big name quarterback, like via trade, who do you think's the most realistic one?
Based off of the cap hit that his team is going to take if they trade him, and the outlook for the actual team going forward, mine's an unpopular opinion. I actually had a conversation with my man Memphis earlier today about this, but mine is Matt Ryan. So if I'm going to trade for a big name quarterback, if I'm going to take a swing for a guy that at the end of the day, the team is in the perfect situation to get his replacement right now, and if you're going to trade him away, the cap hit, is going to hurt a little bit, but his cap hit compared to Russell Wilson's, who's $39 million this year in dead cap, and Deshaun Watson, who I believe we talked about is $67 million against the cap this year for trading. Matt Ryan, if they release him or trade him at the right time, would only count as a $22 million dead cap hit against the contract this year, and they would save about $18 million this year in trading him. So, and that facet of the game, they save about $18 million. They are then allowed to freely draft his replacement this coming up year, and you get Arthur Smith, who can now hand pick the quarterback that he wants to run his system going forward. And the Bears get Matt Ryan, who he's not sexy, but if you want someone who can be a system quarterback and has extreme accuracy, give me Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I think with him too, it's almost like playing the Philip Rivers game kind of again, because his deep ball's just not quite there anymore. That's the one thing I saw last year out of Matt Ryan. So it's real interesting is it's another thing where you're just delaying the inevitable kind of too. So if you have Matt Ryan, what's he going to be there for like 2 years?
Yeah, he's 36 right now. So, I mean, you figure he's sitting right around that same Rodgers age. He hasn't taken any injuries pretty much in his entire career. He's been consistent. The one thing I would probably be a little bit concerned about now that I'm thinking about it, because I didn't actually address this, he's played in a dome his entire career for half of his games. That's my go for broke option, because I think we legitimately have the option this year of either selling the farm, literally getting rid of, even if it's young guys, just bringing in vets this year to sell the farm to see what we can do with our defense, or else we need to start shipping off the old guys. Those are the two options that I want us to do. We're going to play the middle game. I know we're going to play the middle game, but realistically, that's the best option for us, is to either go for broke or start selling people off.
Yeah, and I think, too, is the Bears had this thing where they kind of just went all in on like 2018, 2019. And then they're like, oh, well, we got 12 wins this year, so we'll just bring everybody back. But in the process, they kind of oversigned some of those guys that they brought back, mainly Danny Trevathan, but he's just the first one that comes to my mind, you know. But in the process, they kind of screwed over some of the future success, too, which a lot of teams do.
Yeah, for me, the biggest signing mistake that we've made in the last 2 years, basically, towards the tail end of that 2018, 2019, was actually last offseason bringing in Robert Quinn. The contract that we paid that man, based off of just the production alone last year, says it's not worth it, but also the fact that he's a year older. He's now going to be 33 years old. So we are now paying him, I think he is the third highest cap hit against the Bears cap this year. And we are paying him, I think he counts $24 million against the cap this year. And so you have him and Mac accounting for basically a fourth of our contract cap space. So unless he just has a monster season this year, which is a possibility if we restructure Hicks and Eddie Goldman actually decides to come back, because I think that was a huge hit to our line, was not having Eddie Goldman in the center at nose last year. But that signing was an immediate stopgap from us not only paying for a quarterback, but re-signing Allen Robinson this year, as well as the free agent pieces that we need to basically take in another wide receiver, which is something I think that we need a lot of, is another wide receiver, because Mooney is a great complementary piece. I think he legitimately could be our wide receiver too, but we need a third option, especially with us, without a doubt, most likely losing Jimmy Graham, who actually I just got the notification earlier, got into a car accident today in Miami.
Oh.
Yeah, he had a complete rollover. He rolled over multiple times. He's not injured, but that was just a wild thing that just popped in my head. But for us right now, for me, Anthony Miller's not it. I actually just saw a clip of one of your old videos about how from last year he was one of your bold predictions in fantasy. But yeah, he's just not the guy. I really think we need to bring in another wide receiver, and there's a couple of guys who I actually like.
With Anthony Miller too, it's just so frustrating because for a while he just couldn't stay healthy, and then he had that like one decent year, like at the end of last year he was looking pretty good down the stretch. You know, he's real productive, but there's something there between him and Matt Nagy where Matt Nagy just hates his living guts for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. He decides it's a good idea to play Javon Weems 40% of the time on the field. I'm like, just no.
Yeah, he is the epitome of the guy who can't. I guess Javon Wims fits this category too. He's the epitome of the guy who can make spectacular, vital catches on third down, but he cannot catch the wide open passes. That's the issue with Anthony Miller and Javon Wims, as everyone saw in the playoffs. Don't even want to talk about it because I'm going to get triggered again. But like, that's our issue, is we just don't have another chain mover, because Darnell Mooney can be the electric guy downfield and that short screen guy. I just want another guy that can move the chains. That's why, for me, my dream pickup this offseason, which sounds wild to anyone that's going to listen to this, but for me, I want Rashad Higgins so bad in Chicago. I just want a guy that I can plug out there and that I know he's going to catch everything that is thrown his way. He's a great separator. I can play him outside or in the slot. Doesn't matter. Complimentary piece. Won't break the bank. Just get him on the team after you sign Allen Robinson.
Yeah, and it'd be real interesting to see what they do with that wide receiver position. And I think you need to bring Allen Robinson back, but it's going to be interesting how they go about doing that as well.
Yeah. They basically, they don't have an option. They have to restructure a couple of guys and they have to cut a couple of guys. We're sitting at basically $800,000 in the green, so a little under $1 million, which won't even sign our rookie draft class. So we already cut screen. That freed up a little bit money, but for me, we still need to make two specific cuts. We need to cut Massey and we need to cut Graham. If we finish those two, we'll end up saving $18 million just from those three. Just that alone pays for Allen Robinson, in my opinion, for 1 year. Just do it. Just do it. Like, that's all you have to do is do that, and he's good. But then I think there's got to be massive, widespread restructuring basically going on, specifically on the defense. Leno gets a lot of flack because he's shown the promise of a top 10 left tackle for 2 out of his 6 years in the league now. But the issue is he's not. And so people are expecting him to be this incredible tackle. He's just a middle-of-the-road tackle. He's probably somewhere in between 10 to 16 or 17 on the ranking of all of the teams in the league. So cutting him makes your team worse, because I guarantee you're not going to be able to find a left tackle that is better than Leno for less than his $11 million cap hit this year. So people just need to suck it up. He didn't play that bad. And he actually played really good down the stretch when they finally got that offensive line situation figured out. I don't know what they were doing. Our injuries, along with just us reshuffling a bunch. But Cody Whitehair needs to play left guard. Leno needs to play left tackle. When they play right next to each other, they are a perfect match. The left side gets so much stronger. That's not an issue. Another under-the-radar guy on our line specifically that I think is important that we bring back. It's going to sound ugly, but I think we need to bring back Germain Ifedi. And specifically for him, he was a bust. No one's going to argue that he wasn't. But if we bring him even a little bit more expensive than what we had him last year, I don't think he's going to have a huge market. But Germain Ifedi came in on the vet min last year, and he played very serviceable. He was actually the glue. He was our swing offensive lineman that he played 3 positions last year for us. He ended up filling in for right tackle and was very serviceable. So when we cut Massey, that's the position I think he sticks at least for now. Depending on what we were to do in the draft and the spots that we fill in free agency, he could move back into his better position, in my opinion, which is right guard. Because another guy that I just don't think is it for us is James Daniels. He just doesn't have any tenacity at all. For being like 330 pounds, the dude gets pushed around like he's a feather. But yeah, those are like the cuts that I want. Restructuring, we've got to restructure Leno. The Danny Trevathan one, he has to we have to have a conversation. Look, you're getting cut or you're restructuring. Like those are the only 2 options for him. People are talking about cutting Hicks because we can save like $13 million to do it. That's a prime restructure candidate. He's like the glue guy.
Half that they could save with him. Him and Fuller are both don't have a lot of dead cap, but it's like they're 2 better players on the defense, but you got to get them down a little bit in price.
Yeah, which is easy. Like, that's my thing. I have no problem extending either one of them because you're not going to find a better replacement than either one of them. If you extend them and lower their overall cap hit this year and probably next year, just have a real conversation and be like, look, guys, like, you're seeing all these guys get cut on other teams right now. We're not trying to cut you. We're not trying to throw you to the wolves. We're just trying to keep you on the team at a reasonable level. That's something that you can do. So if you restructure those guys, you can get probably $20 to $30 million restructured pretty easily with those guys. Typically, when you do a restructure, when their cap hits are as big as they are, specifically Hicks's, you can cut it basically down in half for this specific year. He's only got 1 more year left on his contract, and Fuller has 2. I'll give it to you. Fuller hasn't played as high of a level as his contract would basically ask for. Right now, I think I want to say he's the 7th or 8th highest paid corner in the league. And so he's top 15 right now. I don't think he is top 10. I would say his ball hawking skills have declined pretty heavily the last 2 years. He's still a very instinctual player, and he's really good at breaking up passes, but specifically with him getting the turnovers, which has actually been an issue for the Bears all around, that's something that has not basically taken fold. The reason that we were so amazing in 2018 and 2019 is because we were getting takeaways. Sorry. But this last year, I think we were like 27th in takeaways. And that's just not feasible. Even if you are a very sound defense, you need takeaways. Just look at the Browns. They did the exact same thing for multiple years. The 1 year their defense is actually good this last year because they had all these takeaways. So it's just something you have to consider.
And with as bad as the Bears' offense was too, overall, like if you're not moving the ball and your defense is out there, you got to get something out of it, Otherwise, there's just too many opportunities for the other team. What you brought up with Fuller too, I think we're going to see a lot of cornerbacks end up getting cut or taking pay cuts. I don't feel like that's a position that's going to be highly paid as much anymore. Obviously, we saw like Jalen Ramsey get the big contract. Stephon Gilmore got a big contract, but that was a couple years ago. I don't think we're going to see that big a contract for cornerbacks the next couple of years. Kind of like what we've seen with the running back position, but the running back positions kind of come back around a little bit with some of these guys recently too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I completely agree with that. The cornerbacks are always the most overpaid, but you're seeing a lot of not highly touted guys coming out of college that are starting to perform for a lot of teams. So people paying these guys these buco bucks when they can get starter replacement level guys in the draft in the third and fourth round is actually pretty feasible. Cornerback really isn't your biggest liability with as quick as the passing games are in the league now. Typically, you're scheming guys open regardless, and so you just want guys that can tackle. We talked about that too. That's my biggest pet peeve is if you can't tackle as a corner. But I don't think they're going to get paid a lot. But the topic of corner actually brings me to a pretty important topic that we talked a little bit about the other day. Our slot corner, our third corner, is going to be a spot we have to fill. We either need to fill our slot corner position, or we need to make sure that we bring Sean Gibson back, because Gibson was probably the most consistent player on defense we had last year. He was never a liability in coverage. He was never a liability in run support. He was a steady Eddie at the back end, which we thought Eddie Jackson was going to be. As soon as we paid Eddie Jackson, the wheels have started coming off. And that is partially because I don't know what Chuck Pagano was doing, but that dude is not a robber safety. And if we put him in the box one more time instead of the back end, I'm going to freaking lose it on someone. So all I know is that Desai better keep him back there roaming side to side, being a little hit stick on the edge or going for those picks, because he is horrible in run support and he gets lost against slot receivers. It's just like Devontae Adams shredded him like both games that they played him, which Devontae Adams does that to a lot of people, but you can't be looking like that when we're paying you that much money when you're out of the field. That's just my entire take. So our third corner and our strong safety on our defense, in my opinion, are our biggest needs to fill. Realistically, I think we keep Deshaun Gibson. He's going to be 33 this year, but we're going to have to draft his replacement. Ever since we left Bryce Callahan and Adrian Amos walk in the same year, we've been trying to play catch up with those two positions, and we still haven't found an answer to it. We've tried the Clinton Dix. That was a weird name. I was trying to think what that was. Yeah, we tried the Ha train. We tried the Gibson train. It's actually worked out. Slot corner is still an issue, but there's a couple of young guys on the roster that I actually like. So. Yeah,
and I think with Deshaun Gibson, it's really weird because the year before, with the Texans, he wasn't that good. So he's kind of with him on 1 year, off 1 year too. So it's hopefully you don't overpay him at the same time. And I think what you said with Chuck Pagano and Eddie Jackson is very true. He just misused him. I watched some Bear games last year, and I'm like, what are you doing with Eddie Jackson? Why?
Yeah, why are you 3 yards off the line of scrimmage? Get 20 yards back and stand there. We just got so cute. But I think that went a lot with the deficiencies that we have with Trevathan and specifically the run game, because he looks so slow right now. And we just needed more guys in the box, I guess, but that is not the guy I want in the box. So I'm really hoping we restructure our defense a little bit back to what we were looking in 2018.
Everybody talks about how good the Bears' defense was. I think Pagano actually held them back a lot. I thought their defense could be a lot better. I don't think he maximized the talent that he did have. So probably one of the other things we should talk about is the new defensive coordinator. I don't have his name written down at this
It's
time.
Sean Desai. Yeah.
On the side. He's been around the team for a while now. I think he's been there since 2013, kind of started off as defensive quality control coach. Then when Vic Fangio left, he wanted to take him with, and then they actually promoted him to like a safety or a DB coach after that to try to keep him around essentially. But he's a young guy. He's got a really interesting story. I don't know if you read it. I was reading the other day. You know, he never played football in college or in the pros. He actually has like a philosophy degree, a master's in education. So he's a very interesting guy overall. I think it's something, you know, somebody that has a pretty good mind overall, been exposed to the game, you know, the last 7 years or so. He is a guy that could end up really good or could end up really bad, in my opinion. It just, we'll see how it ends up that way. I don't know what your thoughts are overall.
Yeah, so incredibly intelligent dude. He's been around the team for a while. He is pretty much loved by every single locker room guy that is around the team right now. One of our biggest assets over the last basically 5 years has specifically been our DB position. He came around right towards, I think it was the last 2 years of the Peanut Tillman era. So when Peanut Tillman was punching the ball out, he was there. That was right when he started basically going. And so he was there hand in hand with basically every DC we've had since, basically grooming our cornerback position to be the strength of our team. And I think he's done a really good job at developing the younger guys that we've had right now. There's been a couple of flops, but I don't even consider guys that are drafted in the 5th or 6th round as flops. But the only positive thing I will ever say about Ryan Pace is his uncanny ability to find those late round talent guys. And so one of the guys that I like a lot, because for undergrad, I went to school at K-State. It's my alma mater. Duke Shelley is our young slot corner that we have right now. He has all the physical tools you could ever want, but his play recognition is really bad. So I think as long as we don't rip everything to shreds, basically, with the system that we are running with, and we keep the consistency with Sean Desai taking over, I think that we can actually expand on what we've seen. He knows what Eddie Jackson is good at. He knows what he's bad at, but he didn't really have to say as to what was happening during the actual game. So I think if we can transition back to where he knows the guy's strengths because he's been there so long, he can call a more, I guess the easiest thing that everyone should do as a coordinator, you should plan your game around your players, not make your players go with your game plan. I think you're going to have a situation where you do see that regression back to the mean in a positive sense with the Bears defense, specifically the cornerback group. So,
yeah, I think it'll be really interesting with him overall too. We'll see. I know we kind of talked about what if they go to like a 4-3 defense. It's not the craziest idea in the world because Robert Quinn's obviously better suited as a 4-3 DN instead of a 3-4 edge rusher.
Yep.
And then Khalil Mack has played with his hand in the dirt before, so it's not the biggest.
He won an All-Pro at 2 positions.
Then, you know, Akeem Hicks, I think he can play a 3 technique and a 4-3 pretty easily. You know, Goldman probably can play your 1 technique if you need him to. I don't think it's because it's not like they had like this massive Vince Wilfork guy playing nose tackle either. And I do like some of the depth pieces they do have on the defensive line as well that played this year. I don't know which ones are actually coming back or not, though.
That's my biggest. So I have a list of free agency guys that we need to resign. So I guess this is a perfect transition.
Yep.
Number 3 on that list for me is Roy Robertson Harris. So RRH. I want to resign him so bad, but I guarantee someone's going to pay him. He's going to get that pushing $10 million a year pass rusher money because he is amazing in the run game. Eddie Goldman missed this whole last season. He basically rotated it inside, outside on that defensive line, and he was a freak. His pass rush, I think he had 6 sacks last year, and he only played, I want to say it was like 60% of the snaps. And he's just a freak. But he's one of those guys that we kept him in town after his rookie contract on a really cheap prove-it deal. Classic Bears, he proved it, and now he's going to be too expensive for us to pay him rather than just giving him the slightly more lucrative contract last year. But he's number 3 for me. Number 2, well, number 1's Allen Robinson, actually, but that's not a shocker to anyone listening. Number 2 for me is actually our kicker. Cairo Santos is an unrestricted free agent this year. I don't want to go back to the dark days of not having a kicker, and he was the second most accurate kicker in the league last year. He only missed one kick all season, and I believe it was in the postseason. And then I don't know why kickers do this. Like Justin Tucker did it this year too. He missed 3 extra points, but he hit every single freaking field goal, including from plus 50 yards. But he's steady Eddie. He doesn't have the yips, anything like that. He was good in KC when he was there before they drafted Butker. He's been great for Chicago ever since we brought him in. It's not going to be super expensive. Just retain him. I don't care about Pat O'Donnell. He's gone. He's old. He wasn't even that good of a punter this year anyways. But, yeah, Cairo Santos is actually pretty important to me. I want him back on the team so bad.
Have you heard the story about how they brought him in?
Kairos?
Yeah.
No.
So Matt Nagy is pretty much like, I need a kicker. Who do I know? Oh, Kyrie Santos was on the Chiefs when I was there. That's literally how they picked him.
Well, that wouldn't shock me at all because we literally brought in 12 kickers at one point to compete for one job. And I was like, all right, you're telling me during those tryouts, not one guy made all 3 kicks that you made him kick. Like, because if you remember the story, he brought in all the kickers. It was dead silent, and he made them all kick 3 times from 43 yards. Like, he was obsessed with the double doink for so long. And so the fact that we actually have a kicker, it's just like one of those aspects. Because if you remember 2 years ago, our biggest issue on our team was our freaking kicker. Every Bears fan was convinced we were going to win the Super Bowl that year if it weren't for a kicker, which was not going to happen. But everyone was so outraged with the kicker position. If the kicker position was our biggest need this offseason, do you know how happy I would be? Like, I wish we could just revert the time back to those good old days. But yeah, for me, Cairo Santos is number 2. And then number 4 for me is Jermaine Ifedi. I think it's important that we retain him. So those are the free agent guys that I think we need to retain. Do you have any free agent fits that you can see that are out there for guys that we might want to bring in?
I think we kind of talked about the wide receiver first off. You talked about Rashard Higgins a little bit, or Rashad Higgins. He's a fit, I think. A couple other guys that are interesting to me. I think Marvin Jones is definitely one. I see, like when I watch Darnell Mooney play, he reminds me a lot of a young Marvin Jones. So I think if you bring him in, he's still a productive player when he's healthy, and he can kind of help teach and mold that type of player that's very similar to him. I think Mooney's got probably a little bit more speed than Jones had when he came out, but and I think they were both 5th-round picks, oddly enough. He obviously came out of Cal a few moons ago, and then I think the other one, he's actually puts a restricted free agent. That's Tim Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Big body guy. He's got speed though too. Like I think he's probably one of the most underrated free agent wide receivers in this class. I'm very interested to see how expensive some of these guys get. Since the Lions just signed Tyrell Williams for $6.2 million, I don't know why they gave him so much money.
Dude, that poor R.I.P. Jerry Sinclair, man. he is in a rough place right now with the Lions, and I would be too. That's it's actually really funny that you brought up Tim Patrick because guess who's my number 3 wide receiver, number 3 option in free agency? Tim Patrick, bringing him in. Those are my 2 guys, Rashard Higgins, Tim Patrick. They fit the mold of the players that we need right now. Specifically, if we do not bring back Allen Robinson, I think Tim Patrick needs to be a priority for us because he's that type of wide receiver. 2 other guys, specifically, that I like a lot. I think depending on how we go about the quarterback position, if we draft or if we bring in someone cheap, I think a large portion of our free agent money needs to go to acquiring Corey Linsley at center. He is probably not getting re-signed in Green Bay. They just don't realistically. Yeah, they realistically do not have the cap space to sign most of their free agents, basically, that they're going to have there. I don't know how they're even going to bring back Aaron Jones, but I think Aaron Rodgers might burn the team to the ground if they don't bring back Aaron Jones. But Corey Linsley immediately fixes our offensive line because then that's one staple position. We no longer have to flip-flop our guards on both sides back and forth inside that center position. Then everyone can basically kick out. I can throw away a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. I don't care if you throw both of them away at offensive line prospects. But that's a guy who I think solidifies our offensive line in free agency. he'd be the most expensive option for us out there. He's going to be the best center that's out there. He is 30, but offensive linemen play for a pretty long time. And then my fourth and final free agent that I think would be actually a really smart move to bring back, depending on what the team does with him. My other team, from KC, that is where I'm currently sitting right now. If we do not retain Deshaun Gibson, I think bringing in Danny Sorensen from KC would be a really solid move for the Chicago Bears defense, because he's that jack of all trades, strong safety, box safety, flyer with a field, hair on fire player that would solidify the middle of our field.
Yeah, and he's kind of a guy, he's almost like an extra linebacker at that too. Like, he's not as big as a linebacker, but he's not really quite as fast as a safety either. But you see how Kansas City used him all over the field. He'd start, they'd have him and Honey Badger all over, and then they bring in, what's that other guy's name? He was a rookie like 2 years ago.
Armani Watts, our other safety. Juan Thornhill.
Thornhill, yeah. The guy that tore his knee before the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Thornhill is going to be our strong safety. Danny Sorensen's going to be phased out, but there's a lot of things that people are concerned about with Thornhill. I feel like during the playoffs, he finally got back to where he was, but all season he was a liability, and that's why Danny Sorensen was getting all the playing time that he was getting. But I think he would be a perfect fit, personally, for bringing into what the Chicago Bears want to do on defense specifically. He has a ton of physicality, and he's not going to be super expensive. He's probably going to be $3 or $4 million a year, if that. Safeties just don't get paid anymore, except for Eddie Jackson.
And Landon Collins.
He's going to get cut this year. Like, there's no way they can retain him, and he was bad.
He's so weird, though. Like, I love Landon Collins, but he just like
he's so physical. I mean, this is a stupid, easy comparison just because of the freaking team, but he's Sean Taylor, dude. He just throws his body around the field and hurts people. Like, he's John Abrams if he was smart. Like, that's what you get with Landon Collins. But yeah, I mean, there's just going to be so many free agents out there. Like today, I guess this morning, Golden Tate getting cut. Like, you telling me Kansas City's not going to throw him, say, hey, come for $2 million this year and win a Super Bowl ring? Like, come on.
Someone's going to do it. I think the Packers might even do that too.
That's what, dude. He is the perfect wide receiver too. When you have an established wide receiver in Tyreek or Devonta Adams, he's exactly what that team needs. They need a chain mover that is not the target guy. And that is what you get with Golden Tate. He's still so fast. It's baffling to me. But out of that slot.
Wife, shut up. She's like, you ain't getting the ball enough.
Yeah, well, you're dealing with Daniel Jones at quarterback, so that's a whole other story too, as you would say. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many. So here's more of a philosophical question for you. I was thinking about this. I posted it on Twitter today. So with offensive line being all about continuity and knowing who's next to you and their play style and everything like that, why do you think we do not see more teams in the NFL who are like offensive lineman needy teams? Just look at what the Atlanta Falcons did like 2 years ago. They took 3 offensive linemen with their first 4 picks. So teams like that, why are they always averse, and why do you never see offensive linemen from the same program, specifically Power 5 programs, come in at the same time?
It's interesting. I did see you put this out too, and it's like, I think teams, like, you always hear about the Patriots, they look for like these weird things in offensive linemen, how their hips bend and stuff like that too. They got some weird test where they got this stick and make you reach, and it's a weird test. I don't even know how to explain it to people, but I think a lot of it's just teams look for different things, or they look for guys that can play multiple positions, especially in the draft. Like, once you're not in that like first round, sometimes the second round, they want guys that can play guard, they can play tackle, they can play more versatile. So I think maybe that's part of it. I know you kind of talked about, I think it was Leatherwood and Brown.
Right? Yeah, and you can throw Landon Dickerson in there too. You have 2 guys that can play center and guard and a tackle.
Mm-hmm. I think like bringing in a guy like Dickerson and Brown together, that might make some sense too. I don't know if there's an exact reason why teams don't do it, but I think the best answer is probably just because they have some tests they do, and the two guys that play together don't test out the same that they're looking for, or they're looking for a certain thing, like I mentioned with that Patriots, or they want somebody that's a little more versatile. Like if you're going from Alabama, if you're drafting Brown, he's going to be a guard. He's never going to be a tackle. He's never going to be a center. He's too big. And I think Leatherwood's going to be a guard anyways, but he might be one of those guys that kind of shift back and forth too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that's just like my perfect pairing that I can think of, because this is the prime year where you have a couple of teams where Cincinnati, you have the Bears, you have multiple different teams that are looking for multiple offensive lineman spots. The Chiefs, another prime example.
Yep.
Where you're picking in the first round realistically is not going to be a skill position player of value in the first round. If you're specifically the Chiefs is what I'm talking about. So if continuity, so my whole argument would be continuity, especially you can say that this guy doesn't do so-and-so better at this specific position as opposed to this random guy. Yes, that's true, but it's been proven for 3 years that when player A is playing next to player B, this guy covers this guy's deficiency because he's better at this specific aspect. So, like, I'm not an offensive lineman guy. I just watch the plays and I'm like, you're a bad offensive lineman when I see them getting blown up all the time. That's what I said about Eric Fisher for a really long time, and it took him until he was almost 30 to finally get his head out of his ass. But yeah, there's just, like, from a philosophical standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't know if I'm just like oversimplifying offensive linemen, as I'm assuming I am. Anyone who knows O-line out there can correct me on Twitter, but it's just something that always makes sense to me. Like that's why every mock draft I'm doing on any type of mock draft simulator, I'm like, oh wow, yep, there we go, Leatherwood. Oh yep, Brown. Oh cool. Two guys played right next to each other, fills 2 gaps, both top 50 prospects. Works for me. End of the day. But I know it's not that simple. It's just something that I wish was more simple, I guess is how I would phrase it.
I think even like with what you said, like how they kind of cover each other's deficiencies, well, maybe they already have a player that they're looking for somebody else to cover his deficiency on the team already too. And then like another thing, even with these Power 5 schools, you don't always have the same offensive linemen coming out that played right next to each other too. Sometimes, you might have the left tackle and the right guard. I mean, they probably practice together and like they're familiar with each other at the same time, but I mean, even I'm trying to think of a good example but like Iowa had Tristan Wirfs last year. Well, I don't believe they had any other offensive lineman drafted last year. This year they're going to have Aldrick Jackson, who tanked his stock completely this year.
Yeah, I don't like him.
Yeah. He was arguably the worst offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, and he's going to have to play guard now because he can't play tackle. Like.
That's also another thing that always makes me laugh is like, I know it's like a fact he probably can't play tackle very well, but like just being like, oh, just throw him inside. Okay, yeah, throw him inside with these stronger, bigger guys that he's probably going to be even worse against. Like that's just something that I've never understood with offensive linemen being moved inside. Just like, oh, yeah, he'll just be a better guard. Just throw him inside. I'm like, yeah, I get that mobility is not as key as a guard, but you have to be like significantly better at functional strength as a guard as opposed to a tackle. And it's just one of those things where it's just always fascinating to me.
So what about the draft for the Bears? Like, what do you think the biggest positions they're going to draft early on? I know you kind of thought wide receiver, offensive tackle, right?
Yeah, those are my 2 guys back to back. I really just think it's the most sense with a couple of our rotational guys that we brought in just basically off the streets last year on an interior offensive line. I don't think we really need to address those positions. I think our 2 biggest glaring needs are wide receiver and our offensive tackle. Honestly, this is the draft where I would feel comfortable with either one in the first and either one in the second, because there are going to be players of value as long as they don't make the wrong decision, a la the Eagles with Jalen Reagor last year over Justin Jefferson. So just like the worst case
before. Before with JJ Arcega-Whiteside over like 4 other better wide receivers in the same round.
Yeah. Oh man. No, my favorite thing is that it's like anytime Howie ever brings up. He's like, we're really good at draft evaluation. I'm like, okay, you can't call yourself a good draft evaluator when you took J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf. Imagine your team with those two wide receivers on it right now. Carson Wentz would have been the MVP the last 2 years. Like, it never would have been an issue. But
this year he'll do something stupid. Like, he'll just pick, like, I don't even know who he'll pick. He'll pick, like, a random linebacker at 6 or something.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, for me, my ideal from what I'm looking for specifically our run game, because I feel like it was pretty much established last year that we need physicality on our line in order to open up holes for Montgomery, or else he's just going to be twiddling his thumbs behind the back, basically, back in the backfield. But for me, I want a big mauler guy, and so Cosme is my ideal target for the tackle position, either Cosme or Elijah Vera-Tucker, but I don't think Elijah Vera-Tucker is going to get to us based off of all the hype that he's getting. So those would be my 2 tackles in the first round. If I'm going wide receiver, I want Rashad Bateman so bad. I don't even care if Allen Robinson's on our team or not on our team. If he's on the board and we take another wide receiver other than Rashad Bateman, I'm going to cry. Like, it's just going to be classic Bears move. But that would be my first guy. If he's not on the board, and I'm looking at the players that are still available, if he's not on the board, basically that means one of the other guys probably fell, is what I would assume was going to happen. So, realistically, I don't really like Jalen Waddle, but that's the guy who I think is going to fall the most out of the top 4 wide receivers that people would basically put in consensus. So, next I would basically either want Jalen Waddle or I want Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is my guy. I know he's my guy. And people would say he may have a little bit of a redundant skill set to Darnell Mooney, but he's a true slot receiver. He's what we wanted Anthony Miller to do. His route running is the filthiest thing on the planet. I know you would argue Devonta Smith has better route running, but it's fine. Like, Elijah Moore exudes separation, and he doesn't drop anything. He's just a freak. Like, I like those freaky guys that dominate. I don't care what position you play at the wide receiver, as long as you dominate everyone while doing that specific role.
I think with Elijah Moore, it's interesting too, because he's got this wide range, I think. So, like, let's see, like, I think it was McShay that hit him in the first round. But then you'll see, like, other guys that have him, like, the third round too.
Yeah,
so.
third or fourth. It's completely insane. Like, basically you have like 2 major analysts that think he has potential to be a first-round talent, which, like, realistically, I think he is a first-round talent, but I don't think he's going to go in the first. He's probably going to go in the second. Mid to late second is probably what I'd guess. So perfect Bears second-round pick territory. There's, like, people that are like, oh, he's a 4th-round talent. He didn't break out until this last year. I'm like, dude, he was playing with DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, and he still put up 1,100 yards. Like, the dude knows what he's doing.
There's another guy there too that had, like, I think he had 65 catches his senior year when Elijah Moore was a freshman. He was an undrafted free agent in the NFL because he ran slow, but still production there. So
so those would be my guys. And then if we ended up going wide receiver in the first round, in the second round, I'm wanting us to go back. Most likely with Leatherwood is my target. I just want a guy who we can throw on the right side. He just needs to be serviceable. And I'm not going to take risks on the small school guys, because show me a small school tackle that's, like, worked out in the last, like, 5 years. A lot of people taking swings at him, not a lot are panning out. So just give me a Power 5 guy who's seen the big boys rushing at him and throw him out there, see what happens. But yeah, those are my realistic ones.
I think.
Do you have any specific targets that you would put on the Bears?
I think the only small school offensive tackle but he's getting a lot of hype right now, is that Dylan Raduz for out North Dakota. I like him a lot. He did really good at the Senior Bowl. He's a guy that's probably going to be a very good offensive tackle at some point in time, but he's slipping, like, up to the end of the first round now. I think for me with the Bears, I think a guy that if he's there that would make a lot of sense at right tackle is Tevin Jenkins, the Oklahoma State guy. He's a mauler in the run game.
Yeah, I agree. That's my thing, is, like, I don't need the right tackle to be an incredible pass protector. I just really don't, because with the way that the NFL is now, anyways, you have to get the ball out in under 3 seconds, or else you're going to get sacked or make a horrible decision, anyways. So, like, there's really not a lot of time. As long as you're not just free releasing guys into the backfield left and right, you can be serviceable as a tackle. That's the benefit of drafting guys, too, is that you don't have to pay them a bunch to be the same mesh sieve that you're getting from the overpaid guys. So, yeah, I like him, too, a lot. I just think specifically with what the Bears do, I think Cosme is the best fit for us. But, yeah, do you have a preference on wide receiver for us? Do you think there's any other positions we might look at?
I think if it was me, if Jenkins is there, I'd try to take him in the first round and then pick a wide receiver in the second round. This probably sounds odd just because they were teammates in college. I would go with Tylan Wallace. I think he'd be a good fit there. I think he can play in any system, honestly, but that's me. I think a lot of people are saying he might end up playing in a slot. I think he can play inside. I think he can play outside. I think he's going to be probably one of the wide receivers we look back in this class and say, how the heck do we miss this kid? Like, I know he's getting a lot of hype now, but my only concern with him is his knee, because he had a torn ACL. I believe it was his twin brother played for Oklahoma State as well. He had 3 ACL tears and was had to medically retire from playing football. So there's no significant data that shows that it's genetic, but there is a small likelihood, or there's like a small chance it's more likely to happen. So like they're saying it's not all the way genetic, but it could be like that. You could be like predispositioned to it essentially.
Yeah, no, I like Tylan Wallace a lot. When talk about Senior Bowl, he was the only one that knew how to run routes at the Senior Bowl, in my opinion. Like the only one that was doing it like efficiently. So like I know everyone wants to hype up Amari Rodgers and Kadarius Toney. I hate Kadarius Toney, so I'm not going to give him praise. But like Tylan Wallace just looked on a different level of those guys. And people that want to call him a slot receiver, the dude dominated 2 years on the outside, like almost exclusively. Like he's good on the outside, and he's not tiny. I think he's 6 foot, right?
Yeah, 6 foot, about 190. So
yeah. So, okay, he's Odell. Like he's Odell's size. Like
I don't know if you've seen, supposedly at Exos he ran a 4.39, which almost way faster than they actually are. I still think he'd probably run. He might run like 10. You know, he's gonna run probably sub 4.5 though.
I would put him right around 4.45 probably.
He's probably
somewhere in that range.
CeeDee Lamb ran a 4.5 last year, I think.
I mean, it was pretty. I think it was like 4.48. It was pretty close.
I think he's going to run about the same as him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, which like that's the thing. I don't need burner speed. I need play speed, and I need shiftiness, which is what Tylan does. So he's got the dog mentality. That's what I like about him too. Those are always my favorite.
Is there any like later round guys you want them to draft? Maybe wide receiver. I think wide receiver is definitely one. Some of the later round guys that you like that would probably fit in there, and then we'll talk about quarterback after that. But in regards to the draft,
one guy that I think is going to be a steal. We're probably going to have. I say that now. I'm saying we're probably going to have to go up to get him at some point, but Grimes out of Florida. That is a big man. He is almost 6'5". He is extremely underrated. Same thing, big body. He's probably going to run like a 4.5. But he was just overshadowed by Kyle Pitts. Extremely productive, doesn't drop a lot of balls. Everyone will make the argument he's not the best separator. The dude's 6'5". You're not supposed to be the best separator at 6'5". You're supposed to catch everything and be a wide open target. He does have that deep play speed. That's pretty nice. And I think he could be what Javon Wims is not, basically, for us. So I think depending on the direction that we go early, if we end up going Elijah Moore route, like in the second, he's a perfect guy to pair with Elijah Moore. If we end up going with the Rashad Bateman type, I think my other guy, and I know one of your guys, Marquez Stevenson out of Houston, is the perfect complement that we would have with the Bateman type. So those would be my two guys later on at wide receiver that I personally would really like. Another position I think we really need, we need a true like H-back tight end that knows how to block, because Cole Kmet does not know how to block. He's extremely physical. He does that George Kittle angry run shit when he's out running routes and catching the ball, but the dude does not block in the run game at all. And with Jimmy Graham leaving, who also doesn't block, I think getting someone that can be a true quote-unquote sixth offensive lineman could be pretty big. I don't know anything about the later tight ends. Depending on what happens, what is the guy? We probably have to take him in the third if we wanted to, which I don't think we would want to. What's the guy out of Boston College, tight end?
God, Hunter Long.
Starts with a D, right?
No, I think it's Hunter Long, right?
Hunter Long. Yeah, okay, yeah, Hunter Long. Yeah, perfect blocking, gritty dude, like knows how to catch too, like perfect guy. But everyone just keeps hyping him up and keeps talking about him going to New England. Without a doubt, he's going to be in New England. But that's funny because for me, another tangent. If Jonnu Smith ends up anywhere other than New England, I'll eat my hat. Like the way that Bill Belichick has talked about him, the amount of cap space they have, and their dire need for pass catching options as well as blocking options, with them most likely losing Tooney this year, I don't think you have an option other than bringing in Jonnu Smith. But yeah, I think tight end's another position we really need to address.
I think this is a very underrated tight end class. When we look back at it probably 5 years from now, I know if you ask a lot of people right now, they're not going to say that. But overall, there's not a tight end that's really good at blocking. I think if you're just kind of looking for that second guy to be your tight end and kind of block, this guy is like kind of what you said with that H-back. If you're looking for a Kyle Juszczyk type of guy, Ben Mason out of Michigan, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was at the Senior Bowl as well. He is a mauler in blocking, but he's a versatile asset too. He's probably going to run he's just Kyle Juszczyk 2.0, so you could probably use him as a second tight end, fullback type of guy. But as far as tight ends go, there's not really ones that block real well. A guy that I do like later on in the draft is Quentin Morris out of Bowling Green.
Not familiar.
So Bowling Green's been crap for like the last 2-3 years, like complete crap. And he's still he had all their production essentially on offense because everybody else sucked. He was a big wide receiver coming out of Texas. Was highly recruited. He's like 6'2", like 250 pounds now. He is a guy that probably going to end up having like a Delaney Walker type of career path. He puts a lot of effort into blocking, but he has poor technique. Like he could be a very good blocker if you teach him how to use the technique right. He's not going to be like your O.J. Howard, like super athletic tight end or anything like that. But I think he's a Delaney Walker type where he's going to run like a 4.6 something, and you can kind of use him all over.
Honestly, probably be a good guy to bring in. I think that realistically, if we went a complete opposite of what Carolina did last year with an all defensive draft and went all offensive, I wouldn't even be upset with it. Like, it's gotten to the point where everyone on our defense is basically saying, all right, dude, you're going to stop. Like, if you're not going to carry your weight, we're going to stop putting so much effort in. And that's kind of what happened the last couple of games of the season. Yeah. So it's just going to be interesting. But you wanna play a fun game with me?
Sure.
All right. So going through every position on the roster, let's give our favorite fit. It could be either a free agent, draft prospect. Who would you want to see realistically in that position that needs like filled, basically? So dream situation for the Bears.
So we're gonna do like what we think's gonna happen, or like what?
Yeah, we'll go who you think is going to be in that position at the start of the 2021 season.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, quarterback. Who you got?
I think so. This is hard because I think Pace needs to do something to save his job. So realistically, I see him trading for somebody. It could be Matt Ryan, like you said. I think if Russell Wilson actually wants to go to Chicago, they should do everything in the world to get him there.
Yes.
And if you're Ryan Pace trying to save your job, you should not ask any questions about that. But I don't think it's realistically going to happen. I don't think he's going to leave Seattle, even though he wants out, even though Sierra wants out. We can talk all day about that. But so this is what I could see happening, though. I think Andy Dalton comes in at quarterback, and I think they draft a quarterback. I know you're not gonna love it, but it's a guy.
The knife out of my back, Craig.
He's a guy that he's a guy that has familiarity with Bill Lazor. He knows the offense. You're gonna say he's not that much better than Nick Foles, but he's elite. Like, he can at least move around. Nick Foles is a statue. So if your offensive line's like, that's the weird thing with the Bears' offensive line too, is when they actually had the full unit there, they played decent. When everybody was out or different people were out, they played like crap. So I think depth is definitely a big deal there as well. But I think it's not the worst move in the world. And like, I think Andy Dalton can keep you. Like, if you have Andy Dalton instead of Trubisky or Foles, I think you have a better shot at having like 9 wins than I know they had 8 wins and made the playoffs last year, but
I don't want 9 wins. I want 12 wins, or I want 2 wins. I want nothing in between that range. But yeah, no, I agree with you honestly on the Andy Dalton move, but I, as a fan, cannot get behind the fact of bringing in anyone that we could have brought in last offseason. Mm-hmm. So if we sign Cam Newton, if we sign Andy Dalton, like anyone like that, we could have done that without trading for Nick Foles. Why did we bring in Nick Foles if we're now admitting that Nick Foles is not the answer? Mm-hmm. That tells you that your process is bad, so don't just go to your next guy on the list. That's my argument. You need to shoot for a guy you don't think is attainable, is basically my mindset. Realistically, I really think it's going to be Marcus Mariota. Quarterback-wise, that's who I think is going to come in. I think that they're going to it's the same situation you talked about. I think it's going to be Marcus Mariota, and they're going to draft someone. I think in their ideal world, they bring in Marcus Mariota, and Mac Jones is still sitting there. Realistically, though, I think it's Mariota and Trask. And that sounds so dirty coming out of my mouth, but I think that's the quarterback situation that we're going to end up going in. I think we're going to probably end up taking Trask in the second round, sit behind Mariota for a year, and hopefully Mariota wins the job. We have a developmental quarterback for down the road that can take over if he starts to flame out. Worst case scenario, we wasted a second-round pick. We still got either an offensive lineman or a wide receiver in the first round, and we have a new head coach and GM to fix the situation next year.
So the thing that's kind of interesting about that is you bring in a mobile quarterback with Mariota, and then you have Nick Foles type of athleticism and Kyle Trask.
Yep.
But I could see them bringing. So if they bring in Mariota, I could see them going after a guy like Kellen Mond, maybe. That's kind of, he's got a little bit of athleticism. I'm not the biggest Kellen Mond guy overall.
He's bad. He's not that good.
So here's the thing with him. He needs to get hot, and when he gets hot, he's fine. Mm-hmm. But when he's not hot, like, he's terrible. Like, you watch the Senior Bowl, the first part of the Senior Bowl, there's guys wide open, and he wasn't, like, he doesn't have great play recognition. I know, like, he can make the throws, he can move around, but as an actual quarterback, I have a lot of questions. So I think he's definitely a guy that's going to have to sit for a couple years. I think he's a guy that's going to get overdrafted too, though. I think I don't know what your thoughts on Jamie Newman are, but
he is a complete wild card. My entire opinion is you transferred from Wake Forest. I don't care if it was a pandemic. You knew you didn't put enough out on tape to get drafted high, and then you just decided to go and get drafted instead of just sticking it out and playing your year down there. I think it was a mistake. I don't think he thought about it. The one time we have seen him, we saw him in the Senior Bowl. He looked horrible. And so you're going to be a late round developmental quarterback. So, yeah, I agree with that. What do we feel about the running back position? Do we roll out with exclusively, because we're losing Ryan Nall, so watch out. The guy that apparently Matt Nagy trusts on 3rd and 1 in a must-have situation, no longer going to be on the team this year. Right now, we are only going to be running with Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, and what is his name?
Artavius Pierce?
Yes, Artavius Pierce. The guy I actually liked last year coming out. So are you comfortable with those three? You think that's what our running back core is going to look at, or are we going to sign someone late, bring someone in, sign someone surprising to replace Montgomery?
With that, I think they have a pretty good core. Obviously, you have a little bit of concern with Tariq Cohen coming back off the ACL. So I think they're going to bring somebody in, whether it's a late round draft pick or, a real cheap free agent guy. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of cheap running back free agents this year. Hell, you could even bring in Chris Thompson until Cohen's ready, because he's not going to cost anything and he's going to get hurt after 4 games anyway. So that just gives you that 4-game cushion.
Yeah, exactly. What for me, I have it being a late round guy. So I think a perfect complement, basically, if Cohen's not ready to basically come back, or just as another offensive skill position, a guy like Javian Hawkins would be a pretty good running back to bring in. He's got that shifty skill position. He's not going to be that full burner of a running back, but I think it would be a good complement, basically, for our offense, because we like to just throw running backs in the slot like nobody's business underneath Nagy. So
he's similar to Cohen in that regard. You know, he's a guy, he's about the worst pass protector I've ever seen on tape this year, but he does have pretty decent hands. I think he's a guy, like, if you kind of move him around in a slot like that, he could be effective on a team at some point in time, whether it's next year or a couple of years down the road. So many of these running backs this year are just wild cards where they're going to end up and where they're going to get picked, because, like, you get past, like, top 5 or so, and everybody's just kind of in a big old bag. But I think, personally, I have Puka Williams ahead of him. I think they're very similar. I think he might have a little bit more speed. He's a little bit – they're both tiny anyways, but –
yeah, I don't think Puka Williams can play in the NFL. I don't think he can play running. Let me rephrase that. Running back in the NFL. If he wants to change positions and play slot receiver, 100% all behind him, he is going to get murdered at the next level if he tries to play running back. And it's just, he has a different body type. He's me. He weighs 10 pounds less than me and is like an inch taller than me. Wait, how tall is he? He's like 6 foot, isn't he?
No, I think he's like 5'9".
Oh, I'm 2 inches taller than him and like 15 pounds heavier than him. So, like, I know for a fact I would die in the NFL.
I think they're just 2 guys that are really similar. I think neither one of them can run in between the tackles. They're both probably better out, flanked out in the slot, a little bit out of the backfield, but kind of like how Cohen's been used. And, you know, if one of them turns out, then you just replace Cohen and cut him when I know they just gave him that 3-year deal for some reason, but.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting move, but I mean, he's an amazing offensive weapon. Nagy used him amazingly his first year in Chicago, and then just decided he's going to run him up the gut 5 times a game for 10 yards instead of using him how he did the first year. But yeah, what about next position? Wide receiver. Starting 4 wide receivers. Who do you think they're going to be
for next year? I think Mooney's back. They should bring Allen Robinson back. I don't know if they'll actually do it. Like, I feel like they have to. I don't know.
They're going to tag him. Yeah. Like, they're going to piss him off and tag him.
I don't know if he actually wants to be there either, really. Because they didn't want to sign him to an extension. Then he took all his stuff off of Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And then, like, the next couple of games after that, he played like he didn't give a crap, honestly.
They've had 15 months to sign him, and they still haven't, so I don't think they want him, but they are realizing that they're going to lose their jobs if they let him go for sure. So, like, I mean, if they let him go and want to spend all the money on Chris Godwin, okay, sure, do it. But if you spend all the money on anyone else, I'm going to be really pissed off. Like, if they let A-Rob go and then sign Juju to a more expensive contract than what A-Rob wanted, I'm not going to watch Bears games next year. Like, I just can't do it.
I think if you let him go, you got to sign a Tim Patrick, Marvin Jones Jr., like you said, Rashad Higgins, somebody like that, and then draft somebody in the first 2 rounds. So then you have 3 capable wide receivers. Mm-hmm. I still want to believe in Anthony Miller. Matt Nagy's never going to let him be a thing. He's one of them guys. If he goes somewhere else and he gets with the right people, he could still be something. We've seen flashes, but for whatever reason, just isn't Chicago. We're at Mooney, Robinson. I think Miller's still going to be there. Javon Means is still going to be on the freaking team, even though he should not be on the team. Like, I don't think Riley Ridley's that good, but he's better than Javon Weems. That's not even a question.
He's an enigma. He has 11 targets in 2 years. He's seen like 25 offensive snaps over the course of 2 years. And so like we are either like convinced he is garbage or we are just like keeping him a secret from the world for some reason. Like, I don't know what it is, but he's caught 10 of 11 targets. Like, he's consistent. He had a hell of a third down catch in like double coverage on the sideline in one of our last games of the season to basically guarantee the win for us. And I'm just like, why is he not playing? Why is he not on the field? I don't get this. But I mean, yeah. So is that your top four? Do you think it's going to be Wim?
They're going to draft someone. And
yep.
I don't know if it's going to be in the first round. I don't know if it's going to be in the second round because it's the Bears. We don't know what they're going to do, honestly. They're not really predictable. They sometimes go with these off-the-radar guys, too. So it'd be really interesting.
So I don't know how you feel about them. I saw PFF did a 7-round mock, and they had Seth Williams in the 3rd round of the Bears.
Do you like Seth?
No.
He can't catch.
Yeah.
What? I can't remember what game it was. I watched his one game. He dropped 5 passes in one game.
Now, I'll give it to him. Bo Nix is out there throwing ducks, but, like, you got to bring him in. You got to do something. And he's supposed to be this contested catch, big body dude, but he's Javon Wims. He can't catch in contested situations.
I got one. I'll just ask you a general opinion, and it's somebody that I'm not really high on, but I know some people are. Sage Surratt. I think you'll like him because you like Bateman. And I feel like people that like Bateman a lot are people that like Sage Surratt a lot. And there's nothing against you. I just think that's the way it is.
Yeah, no, I would call him interesting. He is not as hype. He should not be as hyped up as he is. He can't separate at all. So I think that's like a definite difference between him and Bateman is they're about the same size. They have the same play style, but Bateman puts people on skates, and that is not something Sage Surratt does. I just don't think he's going to be successful. I just think he's another guy at the next level, honestly, and he's going to be that guy that gets overdrafted, and then people are like, oh, wow, well, that was a waste of a 3rd-round pick.
He can go anywhere from the 3rd round to undrafted is from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Like, his senior – like, he didn't play this year. Then that Senior Bowl tanked him. He couldn't separate from anyone there. He didn't play in the game, I don't think, did he?
I don't think so.
I think he's just at practice. And, like you watch everything, and the corners were just all over his back. Like, he's interesting, but he's like a guy, like, if I'm an NFL team, I'd take a 7th-round pick on, hope he works out. But it's just like from what I've seen, he's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside all over again. He's good at contested catches, and that's about it. Like,
it's actually funny that you said that because in the Dynasty Warzone group chat about 2 weeks ago, I said Sage Surratt is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You've been warned. And
he's a slightly better route runner than J.J. though.
Yeah,
I'll give him that. Like he's
but I think J-Jaw had the only thing J-Jaw had going for him was his uncanny ability to box people out and catch contested catches, which he is incapable of doing at the next level. So like that's where I think like the difference comes in. But like body type, play style wise, I think they're identical. So I love that you said that because that's exactly who he reminds me of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys later on. You know, we both talked about Marquez Stevenson a little bit. I think he's definitely a guy. I know you're big on Tamarian Terry. I think you think he's going to go a lot higher than I think he's going to go. I think he's going to be a day pick.
I love Terrell Owens. I love me some basket case. Diva wide receivers who can break statistical metrics. Like, give me them all day.
So he's one. I think if you want to go with a later round slot wide receiver, I do like Daz Newsome a lot. I think he's a guy that can punt return too. Mm-hmm. I know he muffed one on tape, but he's just a smart player. That's why I like him. I know you like Diami Brown quite a bit as well. Mm-hmm. To me, he's Nelson Aguilar 2.0, so he might take a little bit longer in the NFL, and I think Mooney kind of already fills the role that he would be on this team as well. I'll go with another guy that's going to be a late round pick that I really do like is Austin Watkins Jr. out of UAB. I think I told you about him the other day. Sammy Watkins' cousins. You just watch his film. Like, he had a good Senior Bowl in the 1-on-1s. He was just getting away from the corners really easy. You watch his UAB tape, and the guy's just always open somehow. I don't know, like. And he's one of them guys, he's not going to run, like, super fast. He's not He's not really great at anything, but he's just good enough at everything that he could translate well to the NFL level. Hopefully he doesn't have his cousin's genes where he gets hurt all the time, though.
Yeah, we can hope that he's a little bit more durable. Tight end, I think we had talked about it a little bit more. Offensive line, we talked pretty extensively about that one.
I don't know how in depth you were with offensive linemen. Is there anybody later on that you like at all?
Let me pull it up.
I think offensive line this year is just really interesting. I didn't think the offensive tackle class was that good at first, but now it seems like it's
the tackle class is actually pretty good late.
And then I think interior offensive line is actually pretty strong for like the first 3 rounds this year. It's probably one of the strongest interior offensive lines we've seen in a while. We had classes where we had like Quentin Nelson and people like that, but one guy doesn't carry the whole class either.
Mm-hmm. So he's not going to be super late. But a guy no one's talking about is Walker Little out of Stanford. He's an out of sight, out of mind guy. He had a pretty good 2019, but he opted out this year. He didn't play at all. So, I mean, the dude's huge. He's 6'7", 305. Like, he's a big boy. And he again he's one of those guys who is better in the run game than pass blocking. And that's probably why I like him, because I like those guys to a fault sometimes. Mm-hmm. But he is a hog that can play right tackle.
So I got a couple different names. One that really stood out at the Senior Bowl that pretty much nobody had ever really heard of before that. His name is like Deonte Smith. He's out of East Carolina, I believe it was. And supposedly his tape wasn't that great, but at the Senior Bowl, he had good footwork. He blocked literally everyone there. If you were watching the practice, the one-on-ones, nobody in their mind could block Quincy Roche. He threw him to the ground. He did that versus him. I think he did against Boogie Basham too, Carlos Basham. He blocked Marvin Wilson just fine. All these guys that are going to be day 2 picks, essentially. He blocked all of them without any questions. But supposedly the tape's not good. I think he's a guy that's probably going to go under the radar. So he's one of the guys that I did like. Another guy that's really interesting is Spencer Brown, offensive tackle. He's out of the University of Northern Iowa, which is real close to where I went to college, about 20 minutes away. He is interesting. He's either 6'8" or 6'9", 315 pounds. Wasn't highly recruited out of high school. Actually was a really good basketball player in high school. But he went to a small school where they played 7-on-7 football. But he was a monster. And he went to UNI, played really good there. He had a pretty decent Senior Bowl. And he's kind of like a project guy just because he's so big, he's so raw. If you can get something out of him, if you're drafting him, if you can get him on day 3, I don't think he's going to get to day 3 anymore now because there's people talking him second round now.
Yeah.
Then I think if you're looking for a center prospect, Drake Jackson, I believe, he's out of Kentucky. He's probably a guy that's going to go day 3. He did pretty well in Senior Bowl practices. I think he did all right in the game as well. So he's something that's real interesting. James Hudson out of Cincinnati. He was okay. He was hit or miss on one-on-ones. When he was good, he was really good. And when he was bad, he was just he got bull rushed by a couple guys. But his technique was solid. I think he's definitely a guy that could be a decent project guy, probably another day 3 type of guy. And I think, if he ends up on the right team, he could be all right. But
yeah, some late school guys. Yeah, like I said, offensive lineman's not my strong suit. I just know what I like. So if I see someone on tape, I'm like, that's what I need on my team. But what do you think about linebacker for the Bears? I think it's a necessity to bring in another linebacker. One of the guys that I think is being forgotten about quite a bit in this class, Dylan Moses out of Alabama. Athletic freak. Pair him next to Roquan. His one issue is some of his play recognition. Get him in there behind a vet like Trevathan, who's probably realistically he's on his last year. And then this year you sprinkle him in a little bit. Next year you just unleash him next to Roquan Smith, and you have arguably the best sideline to sideline linebacker pairing in the NFL.
You know who's a really interesting linebacker prospect that he's probably not getting the hype he deserves, and it's because LSU sucked this year? Jabril Cox.
I agree. Yeah. So
he's just a freak, and you can kind of play him everywhere. Like, people talk about Micah Parsons, like how people talk about Micah Parsons. He could be as good as Micah Parsons, but you're going to get him in like the 3rd round, which is insane. I think after the pro day, he's going to jump up a lot and be a 2nd round pick pretty easily.
Yeah, he's really long too, isn't he? If I remember that correctly.
But he is interesting because he went to North Dakota State first, had a really successful career there. Then he transferred to LSU for this year. And then I think Sage Surratt's brother is kind of underrated now too. Chaz Surratt he was at North Carolina, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy, he's still probably a little bit too raw for me, and he gets knocked a little bit because he's one of them older guys too. Unfortunately for me, I love too many prospects in this class that are older, so Twitter hates them. Even like when you go back to Austin Watkins Jr., well, he's older because he went to junior college, so he's like a 5th-year senior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, I didn't realize this. Jabril Cox is actually from like 15 minutes from where I'm at right now. I didn't even realize that. He went to high school like 15 minutes from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, no, I think linebackers are a pretty big need. We talked a little bit about corner. My guy this year is Molden. Molden at corner. You want me to fill my either strong safety or slot nickel corner position? Give me Molden all day, every day. Like, that dude is a freak of nature, and for only being like 5'9", 180 pounds, will throw his body into a brick wall for his team. Like, I love him so much, and that fit would be perfect.
Yeah, they obviously like slot corner. It's going to be real interesting this year. I think last year, a lot of teams drafted these guys to be slot corners, like in the later rounds, and I didn't like most of them, honestly.
Yeah.
They Josiah Scott's the one that comes to my mind. A lot of the Jaguars drafted him as the slot corner. He had to play some this year too, but I just watch him, and like you watch his hip movement, it's like he's got the hips of a grandma. And like for a slot corner, you need to be able to turn and run with the slot wide receiver, so that's a big deal for me. I think corner is really interesting this year. I think there's a lot of different unique prospects. Thomas Graham Jr. out of Oregon? He really had a good Senior Bowl week. He could probably play slot corner in the NFL too. He's not too big. So another guy in that type of mold. Molden's teammate, actually, they had Taylor, I think is his last name. He had a very good Senior Bowl too, but he's probably more of an outside corner. Aaron Robinson out of UCF is a guy I like a lot, but he's going to be a late first round, early second round pick. He can play inside. He can play outside. Like, you just watch him like at Senior Bowl, he take guys out. Like,
dude, those UCF corners are always like consistent. Like, that's like you have like your LSU and your Ohio States that are like classified as the DBUs with Alabama, but like UCF is just constantly putting out just solid players, and they're never like game changers. Like Shaquille Griffin, like you knew exactly what he was going to be. He was going to be a cover 3 corner who's going to jar the crap out of you on the line and out physical you the entire way, kind of like what Carlton Davis does. But he's going to be damn good at that one job. Don't ask him to play cover 2 and run sideline to sideline with the guy. Like, it's not going to work, and it's good for him.
Robinson's kind of in that same mold as him too, you know, and he's got decent size, decent strength, but I really haven't dug in the corner too much yet. I think there's definitely some interesting guys out there overall, though. Let's see. What else we got? Safety?
Yeah, safety. It's not a great safety class. It really isn't.
I like this safety class, honestly. I think there's a lot of underrated guys. I think there's a lot of guys in this class that aren't going to be good, though, too. I think there's like some of these guys that are really small playing safety. Let's put it that way. I love Andre Sisco. He's a ball hawk, though. I don't think you can. I don't think out of Syracuse guy.
Syracuse, yeah. I was gonna say. I was pretty sure he was the free safety. He's a monster free safety, but he does it like physicality wise. But that was like the thing, though. What's the guy at Cincinnati? Do you know who I'm talking about?
That they have now.
Yeah.
Jesse Bates?
No.
Okay. Sean Williams?
No, like a Cincinnati College.
Oh, okay. No, I don't know off the top of my head, but Cisco for me, I think he's slipping too far because, like, you asked probably a year ago, he's a first-round pick. Like, he can play back, he can play up. That's just what I love about him. He can kind of play all over. Kind of ballsy though. Probably going to end up getting hurt because he just kind of throws his body around too. But
those specific guys, man, I'm telling you, this is going to kill me.
You said where was that of?
Cincinnati. He's a Bearcat.
Hold on, I'll bring up mine. Cincinnati had a couple of defensive backs this year, didn't they? Or is that Pittsburgh? I might be mixing them two up.
No, they had a couple of good guys.
Let's see. So the first one that comes up for me for Cincinnati is Derek Forrest.
No.
James Wiggins.
Yes, James Wiggins.
He is interesting.
Dude, he's the epitome of being just silky smooth, like coverage-wise, but just horrible play recognition. So, like, that's my guy that I want as a free safety because I just want that guy who can run sideline to sideline, make up all those plays, basically, just on raw athleticism, and then just work on his specific scheme. Like, obviously different players, but Armani Hooker out of Ohio State never really panned out for Indianapolis like everyone thought he was going to, but that same mold, just freak athlete, perfect, so fluid, sideline to sideline, crazy ball hawk, just needs to get better in recognition.
Yeah, I'd be real interested to see where he goes. Probably like round 4 or 5, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really seen too much of him yet, but
yeah,
I think he's one of them guys that probably needs to get a little bit better at tackling too, though, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Kind of dives at people sometimes.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, that's basically all I got, man.
So you think they're going to kind of go middle of the pack over all the Bears again, Ryan Pace and everything? Like, it's really interesting because they have to kind of go balls to the wall to save their job. But, like, at the same time, like, it's probably going to set the organization back 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Overall roster lookout. We're doing this right before free agency opens, so there's going to be a ton of cuts, and we're going to know all the restructures at some point in the next week. So my opinion is probably going to change at some point over the next 7 days. But for me right now, realistically, bringing in a rookie does not save their jobs unless they violently trade up for a rookie in the top. They get one of the top 4 guys. If they don't get one of Lance Fields, Wilson, or Lawrence, which obviously is not happening, moving up's not worth it, in my opinion, for a rookie, and it's not going to save your job with who you bring in. At that point, you have the options of trading or free agency. Like you said, if you're going balls to the wall and a team comes out and says, we're willing to deal our quarterback, you do it. Worst case scenarios for me, we end up with one of Sam Darnold or Alex Smith as our starters next year. Situations I would be okay with is Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota. You want to go balls to the wall, see what an offense can be like, throw Jameis. Throw crab legs back there and see what happens. But realistically, I think it's going to be Mariota. I think where we go balls to the wall is going to be finally building pieces around them. I think we're going to splurge quite a bit in the draft early and in free agency to bring in the offensive weapons that we need. I think it's been established that we don't really have them on the roster right now, so I think drafting and bringing in a wide receiver are imperative. We talked about my guys. Prime offseason for me, Marcus Mariota, Rashard Higgins, Rashard Bateman, Allen Robinson as the wide receiving core. You get a healthy David Montgomery, a healthy Tariq Cohen. Our line doesn't get decimated, and potentially we bring in Lindsley. I'm happy. Roll it out, see what happens. If it crashes and burns, we didn't spend any future draft picks doing it, and we just start over next year with Spencer Rattler. Help me now. I like. That's the thing is, like, looking at next year, I like Sam Howell a lot, but I refuse to allow the Bears to take another North Carolina quarterback. I just refuse to let it happen.
We could probably have a 20-minute conversation about Sam Howell. He's interesting. Like, he'll look really good sometimes, and then other times you'll just be like, what the heck did you just do? Next year's quarterback class, though, I think it's a lot better than people actually think it is. So for me, I want to see those guys take the next step, whether it's Rattler, whether it's Howe, whether it's Keaton Slovis at USC. I think he could be very good, but he had some moments. Like, he looked better as a freshman than he looked as a sophomore this year. I know the Pac-12 did start their season late, too. You got that Desmond Riddler out of Cincinnati, too. A lot of people are really high on him. I think he's got some interesting parts to his game, but I think he's another guy that needs to improve, too. Jaden Daniels, Arizona State quarterback, he's on some people's radars, too. I don't think he'll last in the NFL. He's just too skinny, but that's me. Kind of that RG3 body type. But there's probably a solid 8 guys that could be in the conversation for first round picks next year, just depending on how their season turns out. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Zach Wilson, Jalen Hurts, and Trevor Lawrence all go like top 5 picks. And the Bears can trade up to 6 or 7 to get Trey Lance. Do you think they should do it? Like, obviously, it's there's cost to it, but at the same time,
if we were to make the same trade, I mean, we would feasibly have to give up less than what Kansas City and Houston gave up to trade up to get Mahomes and Deshaun Watson in their year. Like, realistically, so you're telling me that I can give a future first and a future second to move up? Mm-hmm. I'm doing it.
Yeah. Then you still bring in a guy like Mariota or somebody to start for the beginning of the year and then see kind of what happens from there.
I think they keep Foles is realistically what would happen. They if they moved up like that to get him, so if they gave up, like, let's just say realistically, because we're going to get bent over a barrel if we were going to do it. Our first this year, our third this year, our first next year, our second next year to move up and grab him. I think we get Trey Lance, we keep Foles, we retain Allen Robinson, we draft a wide receiver in the second round, run the first. I would say because it's a season where they have to win, they run the first 2 games. If we're not undefeated in our first 2 games, they throw him out there and say, save us.
Or suck and learn from it, and then we'll just get I guess you won't have a high draft pick next year if you trade your first next year, but I don't know. Trey Lance is interesting to me. Like, I get why people like him, and I think the success that Josh Allen has had is what's going to drive him up.
Dude, he's an even more accurate passer, though. He's way more accurate than what Josh Allen was coming out of college. Mm-hmm. So, like, I like him. The only thing is he has that gunslinger in him where he thinks he can make every throw, which, like, when you're that physically gifted, I get it. Like, you probably can. It's the same thing with Mahomes. Like, people like to put Mahomes on this pedestal, but a guy that has watched every snap of Mahomes for the last 3 years, I can tell you right now, he makes a lot of very ill-advised throws. Like, last year specifically, he should have had probably 5 or 6 more interceptions than he did, just because DBs drop the ball because he throws the ball so fucking hard.
That's exactly what happened with Trey Lance too. Like, everybody makes a big deal about his 0 interceptions. Yeah. On the games I watched, he should have had 6 that DBs dropped.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it's nuts. He just throws the ball so hard that they're not ready for it. So,
to me, I compare him as a prospect to Colin Kaepernick coming out of Nevada.
Yeah,
he's got a little bit stronger arm, and he's thicker, obviously. Colin Kaepernick was not 225, 230 pounds. But I think they're both kind of guys that, they had to sit for a year and a half before they start. I think he could be good in time. The rushing upside is definitely there. So if you're in fantasy, it's definitely a big deal. I think he's a better runner than he is a quarterback right now, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, athletically, he's a freak. Like, running the ball specifically, he's a lot faster than people are probably going to realize. Okay, so for me, people always, when they talk about Fields, are like, yeah, no, he's a good runner. He's fast, but he's all right. He is going to run a 4.4. Like realistically, he is going to run a 4.4. There's a play where I retweeted it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Trey Sermon is running down the side of the field, and he's being chased down by a DB against Michigan State, and Fields is like it's classic Tyreek Hill. He's 10 yards behind Sermon. When he sees that this DB is going to catch him, he sprints to catch up to Sermon and body checks this DB from behind in order for Sermon to score like this 60-yard touchdown. Like, he is so freaking fast. It is ridiculous. But I think Trey Lance is just as fast. I realistically think he could run in the high 4.4s. Like,
I think between the two of them, though, I think Trey Lance is a better runner overall. I think Justin Fields has a lot of flaw. Like, I have a lot of question marks about Justin Fields overall, and I know everybody kind of puts him up on a pedestal too. And we're kind of seeing him get knocked down now, and people are like, "Oh my God!" But like, he's fast, but in terms of decision making, of when to run, where to go when he runs, he's not the best at that, honestly. His pocket presence, too. There's a lot of concerns there with me for him. I don't even know how to explain it perfectly, but
yeah, I kind of agree. But yeah, for me, like, if I'm trading up, that's the person I want to trade up for, because I just want to go balls to the wall, because we're gonna have to give too much to go up. So if it's sitting like, for me, if Carolina passes on him at 8, we need to be trading up immediately. I don't care I don't care what we have to give to Dallas to get to like 10, but just do it. Like, just do it. That's my argument, but I don't think it's going to happen. Like I said, I realistically think Mariota is probably going to be our quarterback going into next year.
If you have to trade up with Dallas, I think you're probably going to get a better deal than you'll do elsewhere, because you just got to say, Jerry Jones, hey, we'll give you this year's first, next year's first, and like something else, and he'll be like, okay, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah, you talk about a team that's corner needy. We'll give you a Kyle Fuller and our first this year for your first. You can take the contract off the books, and we'll take Trey Lance.
That's a whole nother topic, but I think if Russell Wilson gets traded to the Saints, I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to Seattle.
Yeah.
Saves $10 million, and they need a corner.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna get a lot for him.
Well, I think pieces.
The Saints have been the most like active out of any of the teams like so far with cuts and restructures already. They're like every 2 hours I get another notification that they cut someone or that they're restructuring someone. So, but they had to. They were like $50 million over. So.
Yeah, I wrote about that, but I'm like, yeah, they're like this far over, but I'm like, you cut Quan Alexander, you cut Nick Easton, you save $20 million right there. It's not that bad. Like, people are like, oh, they can't trade for Russell Wilson because they got so much dead cap. I'm like, not really. Or they got so much cap ate up already. I'm like, well, you give him Marshawn Lattimore, you give him Taysom Hill, for Russell Wilson some picks, and you got $15 million off the books right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can do it. It's like, that's what I'm saying is like, people always act like so shocked when like the cap, like, they're like, how'd they get him? How'd they get them? I was like, money's imaginary. It's just, it literally comes down to how much the owner is willing to pay out of their pocket that year. Like, that's honestly what happens, because signing bonuses just don't count against the cap. So if you have $30 million in straight cash that you want to give to your quarterback just so that it doesn't go against your cap, just do it. Like, just do it. But yeah.
The Cowboys are smart. They just do that with Dak. They just give him a big signing bonus that doesn't have the cap.
Yeah. Be nice. But that's another situation. Like, honestly, if there's a player that I think is like the most attainable that no one's talking about, it's Dak Prescott. Like, that is who I would be doing backflips all day if we got Dak Prescott as our starting quarterback. But I don't know. That whole situation's weird. I think I'm excited for next week. I think we're going to learn a lot in the next week of how teams are just going to be structured in general, what the actual needs are going to be. And I think we're going to see a lot of veteran players taking a lot of reduced contracts just to keep the paychecks coming.
And even you saw a guy like David Johnson. We cut you, we save $7 million. You get $2 million, then you got to go find another contract and nobody's going to want you. Or you take our $6 million this year and have $6 million.
Yeah, it's wild to me, dude. But I think it's gonna be a good time.
I think it's gonna be one of the best off seasons we've seen in a while. I think there's gonna be a lot of contract restructures, a lot of 1-year deals too. I think a lot of cheap 1-year deals. I think honestly, a guy that should take a 1-year deal is Juju Smith-Schuster, because he's still so young. He'll be like 25 after the 1-year deal. So you wait till next year when the cap goes back up, you get a 4 or 5 year deal for a crap ton of money.
His perfect situation for me is like exactly what you're saying. I thought the exact same thing. He takes a 1-year deal with one of the first 2 teams to get a quarterback. So he either goes down to Jacksonville, takes a 1-year deal for like, even if he just went like $14 or $15 million, just like middle of the road contract, he becomes that security blanket underneath target that catches everything from that rookie quarterback, or he goes to the Jets with whoever they bring in if they don't do it, or that he goes to, I don't even know who the next team would be, but yeah, he goes to one of those guys with one of the rookie top flight quarterbacks, gets all those targets. You see this another 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown season from Juju. Next year, he gets so much money.
And like when you're that young, I think Curtis Samuel is another one that could do that too, just because they're both so young. Like still, they've been.
I really think Washington's going to sign Curtis Samuel. I think he's going to end up back with Ron Rivera because they need wide receiving and they have the contract space to do it. So,
yeah, that's one of the 2 spots. The other one I like is the Cardinals. If I guess now you have the whole question if Larry Fitzgerald's actually going to retire since J.J. Watt's there, but
yeah.
if Larry's gone, he's the perfect guy to put in the slot where he used to be.
Yeah. The thing with that though is he's not really a slot receiver. I think him and Christian Kirk are like redundant skill sets. They both have that extreme deep speed, but are actually really good shifty and like closer to the line of scrimmage guys. For some reason, they never throw the ball short to Christian Kirk, and I've never understood that. I feel like coming out of A&M, that was one of the best things that he did, and they have refused to do it the entire time. It's always like a 40-yard go route, and we're going to try and hit you on it. And they'd be like, why do you have a 30% catch rate? Like, it's because you're throwing the ball 40 yards downfield every time you're targeting me. But
it's the Michael Gallup effect.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing. He's got bad hands too, but still.
I liked him so much coming out of Colorado State.
He's still like there's games this year he's still so good. Like
he's gonna get the one of those deceptively high contracts. He's gonna get the Tyrell Williams contract when he went to the Raiders the first time.
Yeah. All I gotta say with that contract with the Lions though is Anthony Lynn must love him, because he had him in with the Chargers. Come on, like this makes no sense. Guy that didn't even play last year, you're gonna give him 6 like.
Yeah, dude, like we need him. Trust me, he's the guy. We need him. But this guy's like 5 years younger and way faster. No, trust me, you want Tyrell.
He can't stay healthy either. He's good at scoring touchdowns though, but that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a wild season. But
once again, thank you for coming on, talking about the Bears off season. Be sure to let people know where they can find you once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Craig. Again, it's Salad Galore on Twitter, SALLAD. My name, Dallas backwards, Galore. You can also find me over on the Dynasty Warzone Network. I record every Sunday. They get dropped Monday mornings. The Rookie Rundown, we go through rookie prospects, the draft. It's going to be heating up here with free agency next week, so I'm excited to get back on your show at some point, Craig, and talk some more rookies.
You're doing the rookie ones already now, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
I'll have to definitely go back and check that out because I know I watched some of your guys' shows and stuff, but definitely interesting to see. I'm always interested to see how different people see different players too, because nobody's right or wrong. We don't know what these people are going to end up being either. So
yeah, different perspectives, man. It what makes this fun.
So many people this year. It really depends on their landing spot this year. I think more so than any other year. You got the top couple quarterbacks, top couple running backs, top couple wide receivers. You have Kyle Pitts and then maybe 2 other tight ends. And then some of them linemen. There's a lot of system-dependent guys. I think it's going to be a very good draft class overall, though. So hopefully for your Bears, for my Texans, hopefully they pick the right players. We both know what it's like not to get the guys that haven't really turned out in recent years, too.
Yep. Hey, you could have had it worse. What if we had drafted Deshaun and you had drafted Trubisky? That would have been rough.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story with the Bears. They didn't even work out or interview Deshaun Watson, so
nope.
That's a big mistake. And then technically I think Ryan Pace watched Mahomes throw like 2 days before. It was a couple days before the draft, and he went back to the guys and he's like, I think we should pick this guy. And then everybody else in the room's like, no, we're picking Trubisky. That worked out real well. It's always fun to look back. Hindsight's 20/20, obviously. But once again, thank you for joining us today. But with that being said, guys, You know the drill. If this is your first time checking out the channel, please be sure to subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys are into DFS, NBA, or NFL, definitely doing a bunch of coverage on that. Fantasy football, helping you guys out with that as well. All the different football news this offseason. And then as we move forward into baseball season, I'm actually going to be doing some fantasy baseball and some baseball news as well. So if you guys are into any of that, be sure to check it out. If you are a new or current subscriber who has not already done so, be sure to hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every single time I drop a new video. Hopefully we'll be getting some other guests on here talking about their favorite teams and what they think their team should do this offseason. That's pretty much it for today's video. And once again, thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank Dallas for joining us today. And I want to wish everybody out there a great rest of their day.